So when Virtue in Vain started writing, we wanted to tell a story across 3 different EPs, and we always had this idea of writing a trilogy. So the trilogy starts with For You Know Is the Master I Wore, then goes to Dusk Dawn, and then ends with Nothing Is All I Am. And the concepts have gone through different variations, and all the different songs have different meanings towards a wider concept. We always wanted to have 3 distinct EPs tell a story from beginning to end, and to see what that kind of turned into throughout these years has been a process, not only for how to write that musically but lyrically, and trying to figure out how to best tell that story across it. Although we never really planned out what the stories were per EP, we knew they were all going to be interconnected with each other. So For You Know Is the Master I Wore is about the loss of identity. Dusk Dawn is about the worst night of your life, when you come down from that loss of identity and you're not quite sure who you are, and that first night of where you do not know who you are, what makes you up, and that's what Dusk Dawn covers. And Nothing Is All I Am is about picking up the pieces of a fractured mind and trying to put them back together and figure out what is your life now, what is your choices going forward, and how do you really rebuild yourself back up and think about what you do next, and how do you cope with all the things that you've been through, and what's the next steps going forward. So the artwork for all 3 of the EPs had a kind of loose theme, but we wanted it to be continual throughout. So with For You Know Is the Master I Wore, it's the idea of us, again, losing your identity, and that cracks in the skin reflected in the imagery, and the idea that you're slowly being chipped away at. Whereas Dusk Dawn is a very much more striking difference between light and darkness, day and night, which is why there's the 2 faces of when you are different from when the sun went down to when the sun came up. Leading into Nothing Is All I Am, which again is all about kind of rebuilding yourself back together, where those cracks that was kind of more shown in the first EP and kind of reflected in the second EP's artwork, it was, this is kind of who we are now, more detail in the face and being a human being, and just figuring out who you are and putting yourself back together. It was more intentional, that there wasn't loads of detail going on in the background. We really wanted it to reflect the look of it's you putting the pieces back together. We wanted it to be more simple and reflect the end of the story, as well as being kind of more linked more closely into what each of the songs are about, being that each song is a different piece of ourselves that we're trying to figure out what does that mean after going through all these different experiences. For You Know Is the Master I Wore. So For You Know Is the Master I Wore is the first EP that we ever released. It was all about the loss of identity and going through each stages of that. It's the longest EP we've ever wrote, with the number of songs on them, which was tricky, because when you're a young band going in the studio, you're trying to go, write as many songs as possible. And as we've got more experience as musicians, realise that was very, very difficult. It was funny, we were talking about this the other day, and the original kind of pacing through the first EP, we had songs which had so many different tempo changes. I think the song Martyrs had 10 different tempo changes at one point, and it was only when we went to studio where our producer was just kind of went, no, you're not going to do that, which in all honesty that was probably the best advice we could have given, because I don't think we could do tempo changes. We also didn't have in-ears at the time, so that would have been horrendously awful for us. The EP is all about the loss of identity and goes through it. It goes through the different kind of aspects of loss of friends, loss of faith, loss of belief in yourself, loss of loved ones or friends, and it kind of ties together that whole idea of it can be different things that make you lose who you are, no matter what it is, and it's the accumulation of all those different kind of feelings and events that you've gone through, resulting into kind of questioning your identity of who you are and trying to figure out what that means for you. Dusk Dawn. So Dusk Dawn continues on from For You Knows the Mask I Wore, and what happens when you reach rock bottom and you really have lost this sense of self, and all the different kind of feelings or emotions or experiences you can go through in one night if you've got to that point where you're at rock bottom, you don't really know who you are. And it kind of tells a story between dusk and dawn, so it is the worst night you could possibly have. It goes through the idea of cynical thoughts, toxic relationships, frustration, envy, and even Negative Silent being one of the more personal songs about our experience with having very, very dark thoughts and what you do with them. And so the EP kind of carries that undertone and has a more of a darker feeling throughout it, both lyrically and through our music. And that kind of is reflected in the album artwork because we wanted it to be that kind of, from the first EP coming down, and then this one to be kind of what happens when you're going through all these different feelings and emotions. And it ends with dawn, from the concept of the sun is coming up now, and you've gone through it, you've survived the night. What does that mean? What does that become? Who does that mean you are now after you've gone through it? And that leads into what Nothing Is All I Am is all about.